Our next presenter is Remi Castonguay. He will be presenting on My Library has a Facebook page and a Twitter account. Now what? And just a little bit about Remi. He is currently at Yale University, and he works at the Irving S. Gilmore Music Library while he continues to further his expertise in web development. He also writes poetry, plays, and is forging ahead on a semi-fictional biography of Jean-Baptiste Lully. I don't know how many of you knew that. Let's see here. I'm skipping around a little bit. He received his master's in library and information science from McGill University and an MA in musicology from Hunter College. And since the start of his professional career, he has focused on the development and provision of online services with an emphasis on web usability. So please welcome Remi, and let's hear what he has to say.
Morning. Thanks for coming here today. It's always a great pleasure to see my colleagues from New England. It's like an extended family at this point, so always happy to see you guys. First, let me thank all the members of NEMLA who've organized this spring meeting, in particular Maria Jane Louisou, Carrie Marsteller, Lana Refkin, Pat Fiskin, and Anna Kayas. I think all of us here will agree that they've put together a very interesting day, and I'm looking forward to hear the rest of it. Second, a disclaimer of sort. I don't want to pretend that I'm a great expert on the topic of social media. I mostly want to share some strategies and techniques that have proven successful for us at the Yale Music Library. And I would like to stress also that this kind of work is actually a lot of work, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. So here we go. This is our little agenda. There are many points I'll try to cover here, and some in more details than others. For some of you, some of this will seem pretty basic, and I apologize if it's the case, and hopefully for many of you it'll be interesting. So first, I'll talk about the importance of sharing and how essential that is on social media platforms. I will then try to explain how specific social media platforms have their own strengths and how we can take advantage of that. That will bring us to the topic of interacting and building relationships on those platforms. And whatever the platform that you choose to use in the end, the very tough and related question of audience building will come up. So I'll do a little bit about that too. And fortunately, these platforms kind of interconnect to each other, and so there are ways to do that, and I'll show a couple examples of that. And finally, we'll come back at the end to, I put statistics there, but I should have deleted that. There's a slide with statistics though. But finally, at the end, I'll come back and talk a little bit about, so what, why should I do this? Does it even matter? So let's go ahead. Sharing is the keyword of social media, and as you see there, in July 2011, Mark Zuckerberg said that about 4 billion things are shared a day on Facebook, so that's very significant. And you might know that Facebook is nearing 1 billion users, so that's like 1 out of 7 people on the planet. So how do we share, though? That might be obvious, but we share our content by linking to our Twitter account to our Facebook page, to our blog, whatever it is. How do we do that? I'm sure a lot of you guys, if not everybody, is familiar with these little buttons, share on Facebook or tweet or whatever it is. So we do that by putting those little buttons on our web content. And I'm thinking especially about content-rich web pages. So in this case, this is a web exhibit that my colleague Richard Bursey, our archivist at Yale, and I did together. He does the physical exhibit and I do the virtual part. So all of our exhibit pages will have those sharing features. And nowadays, by the way, Facebook use the like button, as you know. Sharing contents on a daily basis is critical to the success of a social media presence. A daily basis, that's really important. Music-related content or not, we share interesting content that doesn't necessarily relate to our institution. Let me just say that again. Sharing content that doesn't necessarily relate to our institution. Most things I post, I get from websites like the New York Times or other newspapers like that. And I also share contents that I find on for example, the NPR Classical Facebook page or the Carnegie Hall Facebook page or Boston Symphony or whatever it is. These guys post a lot of really awesome content, and I just share it on our Facebook page. Sharing lighter content also is important, and these kinds of posts are the ones that get the most reaction from people. Perhaps, unfortunately, although I have to say that Cat Concerto is really awesome. You should watch it. It might be unfortunate that that's what gets people attention, but we'll talk about it a little bit later about what significance that has. And I'll talk about that hard picture at the end there. So what does it mean to take advantage of a given social platform? I find that, among other things, Facebook facilitates conversation a great deal, unlike, I find, Twitter. So that also means that if somebody engages us on Facebook, we should really reply and engage back in what they do and show an interest in what they do as well. So we should ask our users questions. What do they read? What's their research interests, etc., and just interact with people. And that quote there kind of made it real for me. I saw that quote about a year ago, and it applied to my feeling too. I didn't see the value of social media until I started talking with people and not at them. And so what does that mean? Well, among other things, reciprocity, as in sharing what projects other people are working on our Facebook wall, sharing interesting resources developed by others, thanking people for their comments, asking people's opinion, etc. So, and now Facebook makes communication easier since it allows us to use the interface as an institution. So, for example, I use Facebook as the music library, the Irving S. Gilmore Music Library at Yale University. So when I'm doing that, I'm not Remi Castonguay anymore. I'm the library, so to speak. And so that makes exchange and communication a lot easier. And let's see. Here's a very simple example of what it means to talk to people on Facebook. So that's very recent. NPR Classical posted that video of the Kinshasa Symphony, and I just thanked them for sharing this. This kind of seemed basic, but it's important to acknowledge what other people are doing. Here's another example. This exchange started off with me paying a genuinely felt compliment to the people at the Connecticut State Library. And a month later, actually, I met a student assigned to me through the personal librarian program at Yale. And that student asked me a really tough question about New Haven County farming. You want to know how many farms there are in New Haven County, how much food they produce, and I was like, okay. So instead of going through the regular channels of library communication, I contacted that person on Facebook, and from there it just kind of unfolded, if you will, and at some point we exchanged through regular email, and our communication continued on Twitter. And so this slide reads from the bottom up. So I got to know who that person is, and I thanked them for their answers, and I really got really good answers from that person. And so that's the kind of relationships that I'm looking forward to build on those social platforms. And this is I think a good example. Here's some statistics actually, and so when I started doing this kind of work last year, we had a Facebook presence for a while, but it was mostly inactive. And when I started doing this work late spring last year, talking to people, exchanging, you see that our statistics kind of just went up right away. And you see that lull in late summer. That's when I got lazy. and then I started again exchanging a lot more, and my stats went up right away. So let's see. And you also see it from the slide that we had a jump of 646% in the number of likes that we got during that period. So we still don't have like tons of users, I would say, like, somewhere between 400 and 500. But to me, that doesn't really matter all that much. It's really the quality of interaction that I'm looking for. And so building relationships once again. Just take a little sip here. Unlike Facebook, where most of our connections are with people we actually know, Twitter connects people with by interest, through interest. And Twitter makes this really, really easy, I find. So the Twitter account of the Yale Music Library follows a lot of people, but most of them are either music librarians or accounts representing music libraries or more general libraries, accounts representing orchestras or various kind of ensembles, accounts of radio stations, composers, musicologists, music theorists, music technologists, and so on and so forth. And so yes, oftentimes you'll get tweets like, "I'm eating delicious strawberries right now," but you can also find out about a lot of interesting resources that your colleagues at these different institutions are working on. And likewise, obviously, you can share your own projects. So I may make it a point of sharing, for example, our web exhibits on those platforms. And so what also makes Twitter unique, as many of you probably know, is the use of hashtags. And it's one of the most salient features for me. So there are hashtags for musicology, music theory, library. There are conference hashtags, obviously, and like Library 2.0. And so there's a bunch of tags like this that act like a little bit like the Library of Congress subject headings, if you will. So by looking through those tags, you can find people with similar interests, and that brings me to the topic of audience development. So searching these tags, like I said, will probably bring you to people you should probably follow. And in summary, I'd like to say that social media centers on who the message is getting out to and not how many. I emphasized that before as well. The issue is how to find and reach those people and communities who are the audience for the work that we do. And that is not always easy. So I found it pretty tough at times to actually accomplish that. And it's audience building is a type of work that you need to do consistently, not like once a year, but like maybe once a week or so. So you try to go out there and find people who share your interests. Again, once you've connected, obviously it's important to stay in touch and be interested by what peers are doing. And on Twitter, as you might know, is the way you do that is by retweeting other people's contents, by thanking people for what they're sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same kind of idea that applies there. So like I said, it's important to seek out peer institutions or people. And so one thing that I've done on Twitter is build a list of music librarians or music libraries with accounts on that platform. And you see a few of the stellar members here, including our very own Ned Quist. And Steve Henry is a guy who's involved in the emerging tech committee at NEMLA. And some of you probably know Mark Noyes, who's a variations guy at Indiana. And so I have a little community of about 80 members there on that list of music librarians and music libraries. And what does that do for me? Well, what I did is I created from the Twitter list a dynamically generated online newspaper on a platform called paper.li. And you see on the right side that how the paper is actually generated. So it pulls tweets that have significant content to share. It pulls that and publishes it on that platform. And I'm also querying a couple hashtags there, musicology and music theory. So all of this content is pulled by the paper.li platform, and on a daily basis, it publishes a newspaper of sort. There's room for editing, and sometimes I'll do that if I find that the top content is not that interesting. I'll kind of edit things around a little bit. And the nice thing also about this is that every day on its own, automatically, it sends out a tweet saying like, here's today's newspaper, and it mentions the top contributors to that paper. So that's, for me, is one way of staying active on Twitter with a minimal effort. That's always interesting. And quickly also, audience development obviously applies to the Facebook environment. I made it a point to seek out peer institutions that related to us in different ways. And that screenshot shows a few of I think we have between 500 and 600 institutions like that we liked. And I think the screenshot here kind of shows a good cross-section of the different people that we're following or liking on Facebook. And that brings me to my next topic. The dynamically generated newspaper on paper.li was a good example of interconnectivity. And so that a presence on social media seems to become, I guess, progressively more and more important these days. But finding the time to post things on these different platforms is really a challenge. To me, anyway. So fortunately, these networks, while they're expanding all the time, they also interconnect with one another. And that gives us an opportunity to save a little bit of work. And so, for example, blogs of all types normally will have an RSS feed attached to them. And so there are ways to take that RSS feed and push it to those platforms so that content is pushed there without you making an actual effort to go there and post it manually. So there are some online software like Ping or this one here, RSS Graffiti, or Twitter feed, who will do just that for you. And so here's an example of something I did for the music library at Yale. So how did this post end up here? The complete works of Santiago Biloni. So we have an RSS feed that's produced by our online catalog. And every new music item that is cataloged goes to that feed. And via Twitter feed, Twitter feed actually pulls that RSS feed and pushes it to Twitter. And again, by magic, I guess, the feed is pushed from Twitter to Facebook. So all of this is kind of a closed circuit system, and I just set it up, and it kind of lives on its own, if you will. And this is just one of the many possibilities in terms of interconnection. The principles would remain the same, whichever social media one uses. And as a matter of fact, I would probably choose a particular social media platform if that platform allows me to do just that. So the interconnectivity is really important, I think. And fortunately, it seems that most platforms will do that now. So, closing. I often tell people that if you're hoping to use Facebook and Twitter to boost your reference statistics, you should close your account and focus on something else. At least that's been my experience of it. Like I said before, the thing that creates a significant amount of buzz or chatter are things like this here, which is a photo taken on St. Valentine's Day. And I'm in here somewhere. I think Suzanne is there too. And even our French interns are there, I think. And so, I'd like to ask a question, and perhaps we can talk about it. What does this really do for the library? Are we going to suddenly see a spike in reference usage after we post that picture on Facebook? I don't think so. But, for me, it kind of, especially with this picture, it kind of shows that the library is at the heart of the university, as any library on any campus. At least to me, that's how it should be. And what it does for us is it shows people that we're there, we care, and we like to be helpful and nice. So, I guess in closing, I'd like to emphasize once again that to do this kind of work well, I said at the beginning, it's a daily basis type of work, and it actually takes a significant amount of hours. I would say if you want to do it well on one platform, like Facebook, let's say, you should be investing at least an hour a day doing this. And so I'm looking to kind of diversify. I've received some help from my colleague. Suzanne has posted things on Facebook every now and then, and our colleague Eva Heater has posted, and Emily Ferrigno has posted on our Facebook page. I'm thinking, we have to talk about this, Suzanne, but I would like to involve student workers, with some monitoring, of course. Those people, those students it's native to them, and they have huge networks of friends sometimes. So I'd like to tap into that resource, if you will. And I think that's how we should approach this as a coordinated effort between different people who work at the library. So I'd like to thank you again, and I'll take any questions. Jonathan?
I wondered if you had any thoughts about the amount of posts that you're making on social media sites. Because there's a lot of them written about people who are, they'll unlike someone or they'll stop following people on Twitter just because they're becoming oversaturated with the amount of stuff. You've got the interconnectivity where everything's being automated. There's a risk you're having a stream of information where everyone's Twitter feeds just get saturated by your posts and they'll stop following you. Do you have any thoughts about that? Yeah,
so I mean, I find Twitter is hard to keep up with. We have a little bit over 1,000 followers now, and I'll look into it every once in a while, like hopefully once a day, and I'll just look at the most, like the last hour. It's just impossible to look at the whole day. Even just 1 hour is a lot of posts when you have 1,000 people following you. Or when you're following about the same amount of people. So there's no easy way there. I just kind of skim through what I see and retweet what seems to be relevant to us. And then on Facebook, there are certain, like I mentioned that there are certain people I really enjoyed looking at, institutions, like NPR Classical, which always posts like really interesting content. There's a guy up in Toronto who has just a small following, but he always posts interesting YouTube videos. His name is Ben. I don't know the last name, but he goes by Opus 111. I guess maybe he's a Beethoven fan. So I just repost a lot of those guys' content because it's really interesting. And then I try to, like the web exhibits, I'll post some of that and post like specific pictures. People react a lot to the visuals, for better or worse. So that answer your question? Or? Yeah. Yep.
You said it takes about an hour a day to keep up with Facebook or something like that. Would you say that it would be better to spend one chunk of an hour, or is it better to do like 4 15-minute short bursts throughout the day?
I think the latter is probably better. I try, like the danger is that is being perceived as a spammer at some point. So if you post like 4 or 5 things in a row, it will probably annoy people following you on Facebook to see like this kind of row or column rather of posts, and some people might unlike you, which happens. So I try to do maybe 3 or 4 times a day. I'll just go on Facebook for like 10-15 minutes and post something that's interesting, and also like I said, the interaction is really important, and that's even more challenging because it's not so pleasant work to do, to be honest. Like it's like the content of somebody might be interesting and you'll just look at it, but if you want to build your audience, you need to interact with other people's content. So, and I think that's what happened when I really put a lot of work in commenting on other people's content. Our number of likes just automatically went up, and every time I do that, I see that I get more people following us. So, but yeah, like 3 or 4 times a day for a short period, I think is better.
You might have mentioned this already, but do you know how many of your who like your page or fans are undergrads? And if so, how did you
lower that? It's actually a little difficult to know who's who. For some reason, at some point, I was getting a lot of people from Korea, and then a lot of people from the Middle East. And so I make a point to look at those new people, and but then when you're using Facebook as an institution, you're blocked from looking at people's information, like just to see, are they at Yale or where are they? So it's a little difficult to know who's from where. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
Sort of a comment, something that I saw that interests me is the now the timeline interface.
Oh, yeah.
I, for some reason, didn't even think of this, but I don't use it on my personal page.
Yeah.
And extend it to our Facebook page. But I saw New York Times, and they go back to when they were born, and they have pictures of important times in history, and it sort of gives you an archival image of the institution. And I have to do that with ours, so I can put old pictures of the library that I have.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Present the library, and that Facebook page has an archival.
Yeah, I just switched to the new timeline interface, and so I'm not too familiar with it. But that's a really great idea. Thanks. Yeah. That's something that I didn't talk about, is what you're alluding to is, there's quite a bit of work that you can do on your actual presence there, like putting your library hours, information about your mission or your collections and stuff like that. And I've done some of that. And I'm not quite sure how much work I want to put on that. If people will really kind of look at it, it's difficult to tell. So, but the timeline is probably it sounds like a really good idea, actually, to go back in time and put like kind of historical pictures, with our old buildings or our first music librarian or things like that. Questions? Well, thanks very much.